Hi and welcome to another PHP tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at more data validation methods. In one of the previous tutorials we looked at validating form data, and we're going to look at some more methods this time. We're going to look at how to validate usernames, emails and passwords. We looked at how to validate email addresses before, but we're going to look at how to make sure that a username is no more than a certain length, and we're also going to check how to make sure that a password has been entered in twice correctly when registering for some sort of service. So to start with, we'll create a form. So HTML form. I've got two files here. I've got form.php and I have actionhandler.php. So in the form.php file, I'm going to create the form. So I'll just add the HTML tags in here, and just call this form. Okay, and then in the body section, just close that off, close off the HTML. In the body section, what we'll do is add a form tag. So form action equals action underscore handler.php. So we're going to use the action handler PHP file there to process this form and run all the data validation. Method, we're using the post method. Okay, and then we can just add a heading. We can say enter a username, email, and password to sign up. So that's what we're going to collect from the user, that information. Okay, close off that tag, and then we can ask for the username. So we can say input type equals text. Okay, we can give this text box a name of username. Okay, then we can ask for the email address. So say input type equals text as well, and name equals email. Close off that paragraph, and then we'll also ask for password, but we'll ask for it twice. So we'll say password, and then input type. This time, instead of saying text, the input type will be password, which means that all the characters will be replaced with either an asterisk or dots. Okay, so input type equals password, name equals password, and then we'll close that off. Okay, and then last text input will be another password again. So we'll say password again. So get them to enter in the same password again, and we're going to validate and make sure that they've entered in twice correctly. So input type equals password, and then name we'll set to password 2. Okay, close that off, and then we'll just have a submit button. Alright, that's it. Just need to close off that form tag, and we can save that, and we can go and have a look at this page, and that's what it looks like. So enter a username, email and password to sign up. We ask for the username, we ask for an email address, we ask for a password, and we ask to confirm their password before they submit the form. We could go and improve the look of this form, obviously, and we could especially make things like the email address field a little bit wider. And we could improve that a lot. We could align all of these text boxes here so they're all lined up above each other. But we'll just leave that as it is at the moment. We'll go to the action handler file, which is the file that's going to actually validate all this data, and we can go and add the PHP tags. Okay, and then inside this file we're going to have a series of if statements that are going to check things like if the field has been left empty, if data is valid, so if an email address is valid, if a username is over a certain length, things like that, and whether the passwords entered are the same. So what we'll do firstly is check that, we'll start with the username because that's the first thing that the user enters. They have to enter a username. So we'll start with that. And we'll firstly just check that they've actually entered in a username. So we can say something like if empty $_post username, because that's its name. So we can say something like that. And then we can say username equals $_post. So we're saying if not empty. So if exclamation mark empty means if not empty. So if the username field is not left empty, then we're going to create a variable called username and we're going to put the username in there. Okay. And then inside this if statement, we'll have another if statement. We'll say if strlen, so if string length, so if the string length of the username is greater than 30, so if there are more than 30 characters in the username, then we can say username equals null, and then an echo statement, username cannot be longer than 30 characters. Okay. All right, so we're checking that the username is not empty. If it's not empty, we're going to store it in a variable called username, and then we're going to check to make sure it's no more than 30 characters. And if it is, we're going to tell the user that the username must not be longer than 30 characters, and we're also going to set username to null. Okay. After we've done that, we might just add in a break there as well, because there might be some other error messages or valid messages after data has been validated. There might be some other messages displayed, so we need to add a break there just in case. Okay, then we can have, we've got that there. All right. The next thing that we can have is an else statement. So else. So if the username is empty, we can say username equals null, echo, you must enter a username. Okay, and then we can add a break there as well. All right. Okay, so that's the username covered. All right, let's move on to the email address. So now we need to check if the email address field has been left empty or not. So we'll say if not empty. All right, so if not empty, then in brackets $_post email. All right, so we called this field here, this text box, we call that email. So we'll say email there. If it's not empty, $email equals $_post email. All right, so the email address will be stored in the email variable. Then we'll validate the email address and we'll check, make sure that it's an actual proper email, so it's in the correct format. So we'll say if not filter underscore var, and then in brackets $email, comma, filter validate underscore email. So in other words, if the email address is not validated, if it's not in the correct format, then we'll set email variable to null and use an echo statement to say to the user, email address is not in the correct format. Okay, and add a break there as well. We could go and give some more information there, like how they can fix the email address, what it needs to look like, but we'll just leave that there at the moment. Okay, so that's that. So if the email address is not in the correct format, it's set to null and we return that message, give that message to the user. All right, now we're going to say else $email equals null. So if this is if the email address is empty. So if it's not empty, email address is stored in a variable, then it's validated. If it is empty, it's set to null, and an echo statement is used, which will say you must enter an email address. line break. Okay, make a bit of room. So now we have the username covered, and we've got the email address covered as well. Okay, so now what we need to do is check the password, the first password. So we can say if not empty $, underscore post password. So we're checking the first password if that it's not empty. All right, and if it's not empty, we'll create a variable called password, and we'll set that to $, underscore post password. All right, so we'll get that data from the password field and store it in a variable called password. All right, so that's what we can do to check if the first password has been entered correctly. But actually what we can do, and what we might as well do, is check that both passwords have been entered. So just to make sure that neither field has been left empty. So what we can actually do is go back to this if statement here, and we could add a little bit more onto it. So we can use the 2 vertical bars for OR, and then we can say if not empty, $, underscore post password 2. Okay, so let me just explain what's going on here, because that probably didn't make sense. So we're checking here, we've got an if statement that checks 2 things, and only one of these conditions has to be met. So we're checking that the password field is not empty, and the password 2 field, or the password 2 field is not empty. So if neither of them are empty, we'll store them in 2 different variables here, password and password 2. If one of them is empty, then we're going to have to tell the user that they haven't entered in one of those password, their password in one of those fields. And if both of them are empty, we'll tell them that as well. Okay, so basically both fields must be completed. Okay, so we're going to store them in 2 variables there. Then we're going to say if $password is not equal to $password 2. So if the password entered first is not the same as the second password that was entered, then we're going to set password to null and password 2 to null as well. So they both have to be identical. And then we can say both passwords must be the same. We can tell the user that. Both passwords must be the same. All right, add a break tag, and that's it there. Okay, then we've got an else statement here. All right, so if these passwords, if one of these password fields has been left empty, then we can say, we can set them both to null, so password equals null, password 2 equals null, and then display a message saying you must enter your password twice. And then another line break. Okay, all right, so we've got that as well. All right, so we've checked that the passwords are empty. Now what we can do is check the password lengths and make sure that they must be 10 characters or longer, so we can set that rule. So we can say if strlen, so if the string length of password is less than 10, and the string length, strlen, of password 2 is less than 10, then we can set both to null, so password equals null, password 2 equals null, and then say echo password must be 10 characters or longer, and then add a line break there. Okay, so what's going on here is we're checking that both the password and password 2 data, so whatever's been entered in there, whatever password has been entered, they both have to be greater than, well, they both can't be less than 10 characters. Okay, so they need to be at least 10 characters long. All right, we could add some more conditions there to make sure that the user is entering a strong password. But we'll just set that at the moment. That will be enough for now. Okay, now what we're going to do is make sure that nothing is null. So if anything is set to null, it means that it either hasn't been entered or hasn't been entered correctly, the data that's required. So we can now check that and make sure that nothing is null, and if nothing is null, then we can go and register the user and show their details back to them. So what we'll say is if $username is not equal to null, all right? So we can say that to start with. We might just put that in brackets, and then we'll also have an AND operator there, and we can say in brackets, so AND email is not equal to null, and whoops, we're going to have to put some extra brackets there, and also password 1 is not null, so AND $password, or just password is not equal to null, and the last one, $password 2 is not equal to null. Okay, so we're checking that the username is not null, we're checking that the email is not null, we're checking that password is not null, and we're checking that password 2 is also not null. Okay, then we're going to say password, we're going to create a new variable here, password length equals string length, or strlen, password. Then we're going to, we're going to actually display the user's username, their email, and their password back to them, but we obviously don't want to display the whole password back to them. It's not very secure to show a user their password. And just remember that in this example, we're not using any encryption or hashing or anything like that. So this is not a secure form for registering a user. We're just looking at basic data validation here. Okay, so don't go and use this and think that it's a secure form that it's safe to use for registering a user, because there's more that you need to do. So you need to add some more data validation, and you also need to add things like hashing and encryption, and to make sure that no hacker can retrieve the password or intercept any of this data. Okay, but what we'll do, just to display some information back to the user, we can say make a new variable here called hidden password equals, right? And we can put this in a string, $password 0. All right, so it's going to grab the first character from the password. All right, so we can have that as a string, and then we can do that again. This time we can say password 1. Okay, in square brackets, and close the quotation marks, then str repeat, string repeat, and then we're going to put an asterisk there, or a star. All right, and then still inside the brackets, we'll add a comma, and then a bracket, $password length minus 2. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to show a couple of characters from the password, but then the rest is just going to be stars. Okay, so it's going to hide the rest of the password. So we'll show a little bit of the password, but then the rest will just be stars, or every other character will be replaced with stars. Okay, so now what we'll do is echo. Alright, use a heading tag here to put this in a heading. Thank you for registering. Obviously this data isn't being stored in a database anywhere or anything, but here are your details. Close off that heading tag. Alright, close off that echo statement, and then we'll have another echo statement. So we can say username $username. Alright, we'll add a line break here. Email, $email. Alright, we might add another line break so everything's on a new line. And then we'll say password. And we don't want to display the user's password back to them, so we'll use that hidden password variable. So it's just displaying a little bit of the password and then other characters. Okay, and that's it. So let's go and refresh this form, and we'll enter in some dummy info here. So we'll say Joe Blogs for the username, joeblogs@gmail.com for the email, Joe12345 for the password, and again Joe12345 for the password. We'll submit that, and we get the message: password must be 10 characters or longer. So we'll have to go back and fix that. So that's some of the data validation working. This time we'll say Joe Blogs 12345, Joe Blogs 12345 for the password. So it's definitely more than 10 characters now. Submit, and there we go. So thank you for registering. Here are your details: username Joe Blogs, email joeblogs@gmail.com, and then we get the first couple of characters from the password, and then the rest is just stars. Like a star. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching. See you next time.